Stop the cap.
So I went down the rabbit hole of watching as many Hamas videos as I could possibly watch. Um, Pretty graphic stuff. And, both sides are making videos now. You can tell the videos that are pro Israeli, you can tell the videos that are pro Hamas, the ones that are, pro Hamas or pro Muslim. They'll usually have some sort of, you know, graphic in Arabic in the background. But who's right or wrong isn't really what I want to discuss. I want to discuss the way that it gets examined and interpreted in the media. We all know that the media, is biased and that obviously we live in America, we live in the West, and so the West supports Israel, so we already know what we're going to see in the mainstream, right? But there's like another layer to it where I'm reading the comments, right? And the comments are just, just base level comments, no real intellectual substance, name calling, racial epithets, religious epithets. Just, one comment was even trying to compare. It was like, yeah, basically it had a picture of a camel, then it had a picture of a monkey, and then it was like, yeah, just like the Africans. I was like, what the fuck do we got to do with this shit? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Like, I had the Muslims on top of the racism, the anti-blackness, and I'm like, what the hell do we have to do with this shit? You know what I mean? And then there was like another comment, and it had a like Nazi flag, and then obvious they're like, yes, this is a beautiful day, and I'm just sitting there. It's like it just depends on what type of bullshit people are on, right? So like you get like Nazis that are white supremacists. They don't like Muslims and terrorists, right? But then they also don't like Jewish people. So then they're glad that the Muslims are killing the Jewish people, or that the Jewish people and the Muslims are killing each other, and they see it as like a win-win. So you got to sift through like all those like fucking comments. But then like the part that gets me are like these, they just seem to be like white people, like just based off of the names, like the screen names and the tags and stuff like that. And they're written in English. And, there's, again, like I said, Arab people are seen as non white people. And, white people, they hate Islam, they hate, Muslim terrorists, like they have like a particular idea and concept in their mind of a Muslim terrorist. So any quote unquote freedom fighter, right? Um, because technically speaking, that's what they are. Any freedom fighter is seen as like if they do it in the style that Muslims do it, with the headband and the scarves and the shamag and all that other stuff, terrorists across the board. They're just terrorists, and they're evil, and they're faceless and they're nameless, and they hate everything Western, and that's all that there is to it, and that's all shit. That's kind of like how they interpret it. And you can see it like in the comments, and I'm just sitting there, just thinking to myself, I'm like, and this is just funny being an African American, right? Because there's certain things when it comes to Hamas that I can most certainly identify with. The whole concept of, the white supremacy, the oppressor, taking up arms, Nat Turner, right? Black people, self-defense, grabbing arms and all that stuff, right? And then even on the flip side, there's a part of it where I can, see the situation from, the Jewish, perspective in terms of a group of people literally setting out to kill you, right? Because that's what Hamas did. Right, I can get into all the justifications and the history and everything else, but I'm saying that whole thing of like being a Jewish person in a kibbutz and having another group of people that are not you, that are literally going door to door to try to kill black people, have already experienced that in America. Black people experience that in Elaine. Black people experience that in Wilmington, North Carolina. Black people experience that in Ocoee. Black people experience that in Slocum, Texas. Black people experience that, in Chicago in 1919. I mean, the list goes on. That's not even the full comprehensive list. I gotta, really sit down and go through the list of massacres. But black people already experienced that, getting run out of town, Corbin, Kentucky, right? Like we've already experienced that. So like as an African American, I can like see it from both sides because we experienced. I understand Hamas's anger towards the Jews, and at the same time, I can identify with that feeling, of having your people being hunt down door to door, like what you see in the videos. In the videos, the Hamas went in there and they gunned down as many people as they could. I mean, if you guys see the videos, one guy put like a 10-minute collage together, and I'm saying, it's the Middle East, so it's hot. It's hot there. And so like, bodies that have been in the sun for more than a day, they start bloating, and I'm talking about blood coming out of people's eyes and ears and nose, and just and it's crazy when you see some of the people, like we used to seeing old dead people, like an old dead person, like they're near death, their body's breaking down. You kind of get that. When you see the young people, it's like, damn, that motherfucker's got to be only like 19 years old, 20 years old, or whatever. You know what I mean? And is just sitting there like looking up at the sky with dead eyes and organs, hanging out and everything. This shit is graphic. Okay. And I don't know what was up with Hamas. Like, what's up with Hamas shooting the dogs though? Y'all be shooting the dogs. It's a Jew dog. Y'all they be shooting the dogs and shit like that. Um, saw one video where the Hamas guy, he had the GoPro on and he's walking through the kibbutz, and then the shot rings out and then he gets hit in the chest, obviously, and he falls over and the camera's falling over and he's like, and he says like one last prayer, before like the camera cuts out or whatever. So that's probably one that the IDF found, right? But they got hostage videos, they're going in there. They had one guy, they threw a grenade in the house and then he come running out the house and they lit his ass up as he was running out the house. They had one that was, I think it was like a guy, it says he was a senator, and he's like running up the street, and I guess Hamas is like across the street, and they started shooting at him, and one of them bullets just hit him because he went down, and he was out. He was out as soon as he went down. It's just like that's the last thing he saw and remembered is his head, heading towards the concrete. Like he wasn't about to get away. You know what I mean? Because the Hamas fighters, a lot of them are like in their 20s. There was one clip of a guy, he crossed the fence, and it was an old man, and he could barely walk, and he was in a cane. You know what I mean? And he went over there. But Hamas went in. When I tell you they were gunning people down, they were gunning people down. Okay, like they had one clip where the guy, he was trying to get into the kibbutz, like the Hamas was already at the kibbutz, but they were trying to get in because it's like gated. It had like this big yellow gate, and so they were trying to get in. And you probably seen it on the news, but they edited the fuck out of that video. So he's trying to get into the Hamas is trying to get into the kibbutz, but they can't. So they wait for a car to pull up, and I guess it probably has weight sensors underneath the concrete or whatever. So once the car pulls up, or there was like a gate thing. One of the guys went into the gate thing. Anyway, the car pulls up, and then the gate opens. I guess maybe the guy has like a garage door opener or something. It has to be something that triggered the gate to open when the car came. And Hamas dude came out the bushes and was like, shot out the back window, shot out the front window. You could see the driver, taking the hits in the front seat, and then he just stopped moving. You know what I mean? They went in there, and then even the images of the kibbutz inside the houses and whatnot, blood. Like, they caught people in their bed, like freaking Tony Montana, freaking mobster style, like just, spraying motherfuckers there. One movie was that in where they shot the couple in the bed. Like, it was like that type of shit. Shot the couple in the bed. You could see blood all over the bed. You know what I mean? Like it's some straight, and I think that's like one of the things that people have a problem with. It's like if there's like a Jewish like general sitting in a living room somewhere, pushing or not in a living room, but in like a military base, and he pushes a button and a rocket goes up in the air and then lands, on a village or a town in Gaza Strip, like that's like sanitized. Like people act like, it's like the difference between it's like when people go out here and they hunt deer and they shoot the deer and they record the video and they show you shooting the deer and people are like, oh my god, it's cruelty to animals and da 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 da, and the person like fleeces the deer and then cooks up the deer and then shows how he's eating deer meat or crocodile meat or something like. But there's a lot of people that get real sensitive when they watch the death of the animal, right? But yet people sit there and have a T-bone steak and have a hamburger and all this stuff, right? Never been to a slaughterhouse where these animals are getting slaughtered and they don't think anything of it. You know what I mean? But again, it's like to me, it's like war is war and death is death. And even when it comes to like the terrorism, like I see people bitching about, oh, this is terrorism. How would Hamas fight back? They don't have the capability that Israel has. They don't have, the rockets. They don't have the tanks. They don't have the infrastructure. They don't have any of that stuff. The weaker group is always going to enact acts of terrorism like that. So I don't know what people don't get about that, about being, the rebel force, being I mean, hell, even in Star Wars, the Rebel Alliance, and they were going up against the freaking the what was it called, the Imperial, the freaking, damn, what was it called in Star Wars, freaking Darth Vader and all that shit, the Empire, going up against the Empire, right? You know what I mean? Like, how you supposed to go up against a Starcraft carrier and shit like that? How you supposed to go up against that? He got a fleet of TIE fighters and shit like that, right? You gotta be on some guerrilla warfare Ewok shit. You know what I mean? But I guess a lot of people have an issue with like the timing. When they see like Hamas doing the shit, like they don't like, and I keep coming across people that, now I'm at an age where I'm like, yo, this shit has been going on since I was a little kid. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I was arguing, with somebody about, Hamas. Like, fucking Israel created Hamas, or heavily supported Hamas. Hamas had that blind guy, who ironically they kind of put a character like that in the new, modern warfare Call of Duty. They had this blind guy who was like the mastermind and shit, and he was an Islamic cleric. He was an Islamist. He was one of these, theocracy type, like the shit that you got in Iran. Anyway, he was against the PLO, which was Yasser Arafat's, organization, and Israel didn't like the PLO, didn't like Yasser Arafat, so they helped support this Islamic group, which inevitably became Hamas, because they thought that they were going to basically get divide and conquer. That was the tactic, right? Same kind of bullshit that U.S. did, with COINTELPRO and, dividing up the Nation of Islam and having the different factions and then flaming the fuels. I mean, again, just go and read, um, the objectives of COINTELPRO. Just read the objectives. This is the U.S. government doing that shit. So you already know Israel got some shit like that. They were like, how do we undermine what's going on in Gaza? Oh, okay, we're going to back and we're going to support, the other faction, because we don't like the PLO. PLO too big, they too political, right? Y'all remember, I mean, some of y'all remember Yasser Arafat. Some of y'all remember, him up there, holding hands, I think, with Bill Clinton and shit like that. Y'all remember that shit, okay? Or George Bush, right? He was a big player, right? About the peace in the Middle East and all that other shit that they used to talk about, back in the 90s. But you know, Israel created, that's Israel's creation. That's their Frankenstein. You know what I mean? And now, they gotta go and try to, rectify that. But I'm like, not only do you have people who feel slighted because of the whole history of Israel and Palestine and all that conflict, but then you give it how I want to say this, you give control to the Islamist, like the craziest of crazies. I'm like, oh, y'all done fucked up. I mean, they completely fucked up. But see, a lot of people don't know that. Again, like when it comes to even that documentary that I posted on the community tab. When it comes to like terrorism as we know it, like terrorism as we know it was really learned, from the Israelis. The Israelis were the first terrorists. They were the ones that were bombing hotels and bombing embassies, to get the British out of there, because it was the British after World War One. The British, got control of Palestine because the Ottoman Empire, right? They were out, right? They were done. So the Ottoman Empire was done, and then the British took control, and they had Jews that were there. Again, I told you there's three type of Jews: Sephardic Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, which are the ones from Europe that came by the boatload after World War II, and then there was the Mizrahi Jews. That's how you say it. I figured out how to say it, right? And those are the Middle Eastern Jews that have always been there, that have always been small populations, in the area, right? And so they've basically shared that area for a long time, but it wasn't until the Jews came and they started buying up the land, and then the Arabs was like, yo, and then the Jews, I mean, they were not playing. They were bombing the British. They were attacking excuse me, Arab communities, just like you see in this video, like just going in there and just slaughtering the whole village. Okay. The Jewish people did that. Again, go look it up. I don't want to make this video long and excessive. Go look up Stern Gang. Go look up the Haganah, which again, I think that was the organization that David Ben Gurion was associated with. The Haganah is what is today the IDF. But the Stern Gang, the organization, they got like statues in Israel, like with the holding their hand up. It's like it's called the priest hand or the Benedict hand, right? They're holding their hand up, and I mean, you got like even in that documentary that they covered it. I mean, the British, they had an interview with some British guys in that documentary that were soldiers at the time, and they were old men, and they were basically like, yeah, they were like, the Arabs, like all we had to worry about with them was them stealing shit, but they weren't trying to kill you. The Jewish people, they were trying to kill you. They were trying to blow your shit up and get you the fuck out of there. And the British, I mean, they had all type of posters and wanted posters, and I mean, they wanted these people. I mean, they went in there and they did exactly what Hamas is doing now. They went into tents, sprayed the tent down. They even had one scene in there where that's why the video is age restricted, but they the British had captured some quote unquote Israeli terrorists, and they were going to hang them because that's what they did. And the Israelis, they caught two British police officers, and they were like, you need to let our people go, and then we'll let your people go. Well, the British were like, nah, fuck that, we hanging them, hung them anyway. And then the Israelis, they killed the two police officers and then hung them like in the woods, like on display and shit. And then they booby trapped the body. So then when another police officer came to take the body down from the tree of the two police officers that were killed, that officer was killed because basically, there was a booby trap and the body blew up or something like that. So like, this is how Israel like took over the area, and that all that kind of gets ignored. The Palestinians didn't have any say. Nobody was catering to them and what their needs were. And again, when the British tried to make concessions, the Stern Gang, or a group the other name that they go by is Lay. I thought it was Lehi, but it's Lay. And they were like, get the British the fuck out of here. And then that's when the British passed the football to the United Nations, and they were like, look, we hands off, we ain't dealing with the shit. Even one of they had a vote recently, and the U.S. like abstained. The U.K. abstained from the shit. Somebody sent me some link today, and I was like, oh, and it's like the U.S. said no, and then the U.K. was like abstain, and then Russia abstained, right? So they didn't want they don't want anything to do with it because obviously, arguably, there's some the conflict of interest, but the British were like, yo, you want us out of here? We out of here. But anyway, the part that I wanted to really say, the part that was kind of like really irritating me about a lot of these comments is like these white American types that whenever you talk about America, they're like America, screeching bald eagle that's actually a red-tailed hawk, but that's a whole nother conversation, right? America, right, and they have this warped white people concept of America and what America is and freedom, and like they hate Piers Morgan, like especially if Piers Morgan makes does an interview talking about gun control, and then like the white people will be like, yeah, we have guns because we were fighting your bitch ass, right? Like because he's from the UK, right? Because we were trying to get away from the crown. Somehow that like completely goes over these white folks' heads. I'm like, is that not what the Palestinians are doing, trying to like get away from oppression? Like, what type of atrocities? I know everybody wants to like glorify the Revolutionary War. What type of atrocities what type of atrocities did the Americans commit against the British? We always hear about what the British did against the Americans and why there's laws like the Fourth Amendment, like no quartering, what I mean, where they could just come in your house. Because the British used to do that. They'd be in an area and they'd be like, we need barracks. And then they would, just knock on somebody's door and be like, yeah, your living room will do. And then you just come in there. That's why that law is there, right? Because they used to just basically just do whatever the fuck they wanted to do. Think about that. Think about what is it? I'm pretty sure it's the Fourth Amendment. Fourth Amendment. I want to make sure I'm right. What is the Fourth Amendment? Unreasonable searches and seizures. Which amendment covers quartering? What amendment covers quartering? Hold on, let me pull this shit up. Third Amendment, I'm sorry, not the Fourth Amendment. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. Meaning, like martial law would have to be enacted. But think about that. Why would you make this the Third Amendment? Everybody's like, the First Amendment, freedom of speech and freedom of religion and freedom of press, right? Second Amendment, right, is the right to keep and to bear arms for the common average citizen, right? It's the right of the people. It's not the right of the militia. It's the right of the people, right? And then the third order of business is make sure soldiers can't just show up in your house. So you already know the type of fuckboy shit that the British were doing for the Third Amendment to be the Third Amendment, right? And it like there's I swear like I guess like we can just call it racism. That would be the easiest way. I don't like to be that dismissive, but white people keep proving me right all the time. Where it's like, how you can be a white American and you love 4th of July. You love the fact that America, they kicked the British's ass and got the redcoats the fuck out of here. You watch movie, it's like The Patriot. Like, y'all remember the scene in The Patriot, right after they killed his son? And or I think either they killed his son and they were taking his son away, and they were and then him and his, I think that might have been the scene where one of his sons died or something. I forget what happened. I forget the details of it. I'll pull up the clip. But anyway, I remember in The Patriot with Mel Gibson, they had, and we already know how his racist bullshit, but we had Mel Gibson in The Patriot, and him and his sons were hiding in the woods, and then they popped off the ambush against the British, right? Because I think they were taking one of his sons away or something like that. They were trying to arrest one of his sons or something. You know what I mean? And he was like, nah, fuck that shit, right? And I'm saying, like, there's parallels between that and what Hamas is doing. I mean, if you really sat down and you looked at the numbers and the stats and the kids getting arrested for, all type of, crimes, namely throwing rocks and being shot at, because some of the soldiers are just like, fuck it, I'm gonna pop a shot, and they'll do that shit. And they've been doing that shit. They've been doing that shit since I was a little kid. I remember seeing that shit on the TV. Okay? That shit has been going on, my entire life. So when people are like, they act like the Palestinians just woke up one day and decided to go in there and fuck shit up. Like, nah, like that again, that type of anger doesn't come out of nowhere. Same shit with 9/11. Oh, they hate us because they hate our freedom. How about 100 years of US foreign policy in the Middle East and, supporting and backing despots? Like, how about that shit? It's supporting people that clearly have human rights violations in their own region. Like when people want to talk about, some of the savagery that goes on in the Middle East and how we view Muslims in the West, how much is that tied to those people growing up in cultures where the United States, I shouldn't say we, but the West, the United States is the result of them keeping people like Saddam Hussein in power. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if you ever seen that clip where the people, they were trying to overthrow Saddam Hussein and he called them all into, a meeting. And then, one by one, he read the list. He had some guy told him he'd spare his life if he give me the names. And then he freaking, had all the people in the room, soldiers outside, ready to execute people on the spot, and said their names, you know what I mean, while he was up there smoking a cigar like he was a fucking gangster. Y'all got to see the video. They actually have the video from the fucking, I don't know, I think it was like the 70s. It's black and white. And he's just up there calling the names. And all the people that he called the names of were people that were going to be executed, right? Meanwhile, and again, anytime, look, we can talk about this, the Constitution. You get all these white American, we love America type of people, right? And people will jump up and they'll sit there and they'll say January 6th and they tried to overthrow the government. Do you know that overthrowing the government is a part of, the preamble of the Declaration of Independence? Have you ever sat and read it? See, I sit there and I read the shit. I'm not just spewing bullshit. It's like when I go and I argue with some of the things I don't like about, the people's holy books and shit like that. I'm like, actually, it says this right in there. Did you ever read that? No, because and I had a Muslim person tell me, and it was the best explanation ever. And this woman is a Muslim woman, and she said, you have to understand that some Muslims are cultural Muslims. I was like, what do you mean? She was like, look, this is what, I know, and I've had imams express this to me. People who have questions about Islam or entertain Islam or the concept of it, right? When you have it's so condescending when Muslims say this, you're reverting to Islam, right? Because, that's how they see it. You're not a convert, you're a revert. But anyway, one of the points that she made, and she was saying that, I don't know whether she got it from the imam or they just both agreed, but it's like when people come into the space, the Muslim space, and they want to read the Quran, like the unbelievers, the people who don't believe, they actually sit there and they read it, and they're reading it for context. Okay, they're reading it to understand like what's actually there. Like I said, you can listen to 16 hours of the Holy Quran right on YouTube. You can sit there, put your headphones in, and jam out to it and listen to it. You know what I mean? And there will be stuff in there you can be like, huh? You know what I mean? And Allah has put, seals over, their hearts and their ears, and they will be companions of the fire. It's like, wait a minute, how is it? Why do they got to be companions of the fire if Allah is the one putting the seals over the ears and their hearts? Like, I don't get that. How is that their fault if Allah is the one that put the seals there, right? And so like shit like that, I'm like, I want explanation. So I'm asking questions like that. She running back, she's like, shit, I don't even know what the answer to that. Let me go ask my dad because, he's like focused, he's like a scholarly person about the Quran. You know what I mean? But in any event, the point is that, the people like when I'm examining shit, or talking about, just when people come into a religion, they're actually they're reading it. They're not just cultural Muslims or cultural Christians. Like, Cap, he went and he was, he went to like, I don't know what level it was, but he went to some crazy high level of being a Jehovah Witness, and he's at the point where, again, he walked away from being a Jehovah Witness, and the Jehovah Witnesses, they get to talking to him, they don't realize how deep he went. And once they realize how deep he went, they're like, oh my God, you're gonna go to hell because you got the message, and you went to the 33rd chamber, and you how dare you walk away? You know what I mean? And that's tied to the fact that, like, now all their secrets, too much about the organization, and they don't want you to go back out there and be, spreading that shit, or coming up with, ways to, attack the organization or attack the group. Kind of like Johnny Harris, with his whole walking away from Mormonism. You know what I mean? If you haven't watched his video on walk away from Mormonism. But I'm just saying, she really gave a kick-ass explanation on, like, there's people who will get offended at some of the things that you say because they're cultural Muslims, even though you are actually, accurately quoting the Quran and asking the right questions. But see, they feel some type of way because they haven't read the Quran, but they're ethnically, Muslim based on, their cultural heritage. So she was like, no, you're right to ask questions, but when you ask the questions as an unbeliever, they get offended because they think that you're attacking their culture. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like, she broke that shit down, just solid. And again, I still have my issues, with religion, but I still want people to use their brains. I'm like, yo, but this right here don't make any sense. But anyway, getting back to reading and researching and all that stuff, like, you have people in America that kind of treat the Declaration of Independence, and they treat the Constitution as almost like a religious document, but they haven't even fucking read it. They don't know what they're talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like when people, you get people that try to act like, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is like an actual, like, it's actually an amendment. I'm like, that's not in there. Yeah, it is. Yeah, sure it is. It's like, no, that's not in there. You know what I mean? So you get people that they hear things, and then they kind of, like, they run with it. Because these are things that have been said. Maybe it was in a president's speech. You know what I mean? Like, hold on. Let me see where this shit. Where is life, liberty? I'm pretty sure it's in the Declaration. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness written. Yeah, it's in the Declaration of Independence. It's not in the Constitution. It's not in the Bill of Rights. It's in the Declaration of Independence. So when people say that, like, when we get to talking about gun control, people will be like, it's my right to feel safe. There's no such thing as your right to feel safe. Like, how do you even codify a feeling? You don't have a right to feel safe. You see? But see, you can get sticky because it's like, do you have a right to, to have, food and shelter? Do you have a right to, a relationship? Like, what I mean? Do you have a right to, an abortion? You're right. Like, how, like, where do you draw the line? So this shit gets sticky. But in any event, I'm saying, it's just funny to me at how, it's like America had its revolution. Let me see if I can find, quotes the British made about American revolutionaries. I'm pretty sure it's going to be somebody with a Harry Potter voice, talk. And if you've noticed, what's funny in the Star Wars movies, you ever notice that the commanders of the starships, or the star, or the Death, not the Death Star, the fucking the Star Destroyers, right? You ever notice that they all have British accents? You ever notice that? Like, it's the pompousness, right? That's signified by, somebody in that type of authoritative position. Even in the new Star Wars, all of the commanding officers, all of the, even in the freaking, in the video game, all the commanding officers, all the ones that are like Lord Vader, you know what I mean? They all have British accents. Where is this at? Let me see. Let me see some quotes. Most anxious apprehension for ourselves and posterity that we behold the growing distractions in American threaten. I need quotes. Give me some quotes. I should ask Chat GPT. Hold on a second. These are the times that try men's souls. No, this is an American Revolution. I want British quotes. I want British quotes. These are American quotes. These are all like, nah. I want the quotes of the British talking they shit. You know what I mean? These insufferable rebels. You know what I mean? Like I want those quotes. Hold on, let me see if I can find some. I'm gonna pause this real quick and then continue. All right, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. King George III. The die is now cast. The colonies must either submit or triumph. I wish that the rebels may be convinced of their error. King George III expressing his determination to suppress the American rebellion. Lord North. If we do not put this down, the Americans will write a book of their own of our gross mismanagement of the American war. Lord North, British Prime Minister during the American Revolution, acknowledging the potential consequences of the conflict. And then here's some other ones. Horace Walpole. There is no America now. I do not choose to get angry over it. Horace Walpole, British writer and politician, expressing resignation over the loss of the American colonies. Edmund Burke, the colonists are not in England, but they're 1,000 miles away. They are therefore not particularly under the control of the mother country. Edmund Burke, an Irish statesman and philosopher, reflecting on the challenges of governing distant colonies. So, like, this is like them trying to like come up with justifications, like they're way over there. So, like, who cares, right? This is Thomas Hutchinson. The existence of this province depends on the absolute supremacy of Parliament. Thomas Hutchinson, colonial governor of Massachusetts, defending British authority in the colonies. Samuel Johnson. How is it that we hear the loudest yelps for liberty among the drivers of Negroes? Samuel Johnson, English writer and critic, expressing skepticism about American claims to liberty while slavery was still practiced. Good point, right? Charles Cornwallis. The American War is over, but this is far from the case with the American Revolution. On the contrary, nothing but the first act of great drama is closed. Charles Cornwallis, British general who surrendered at Yorktown, recognizing that the spirit of the revolution would persist even after the war. Okay, so like, again, right? Americans were the revolutionaries. Americans fought the British, right? Let me see if I can find. Give a quote of the British describing the atrocities at the hands of American revolutionaries. Let's see what this says. Let's see what it says. The infernal acts of cruelty committed in cold blood by the Americans during the course of this year will not be believed. Sir Henry Clinton, British military commander during the American Revolution, expressing his shock and condemnation of the actions of American revolutionaries. That's the type of quote that I was looking for. Right, the infernal acts of cruelty committed in the cold blood by the Americans during the course of this year will not be believed. Right, I see these comments about, oh, Hamas, like, there's nothing pretty about war. There's nothing pretty about conflict. If I bust you over your head, I'm busting you over your head. Like, I don't know. I guess it's so loaded. Like when I look at this shit and I see the bias, Like I see it. Like it's like, and this is like the same thing that like Amazing Lucas discovered. It's like, when he, talk about, you know, let me look, Philando Castile. Ah, well, if he would only comply, then all you do is change the race. And then you got Ashley Babbitt storming the Capitol January 6th. And then all of a sudden, that officer, he needs to be hung for high treason. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the man was doing his job protecting Congress, but because it was a black, Capitol police officer, right? Or what do you call that shit? Secret Service, right? Versus, Ashley Babbitt, who was a white woman. Oh my God. Now the energy just totally changes. The energy is completely different, right? But I can get white Americans, right, where again, that all their patriotism, all their "we love America" and everything else like that. Again, look up the quotes of what the British had to say about American revolutionaries. American revolutionaries were doing the same thing. I remember there was a quote where it was like some British commander. I could probably try to find it, but some British commander, he felt some type of way because, the Americans, they were doing guerrilla warfare. They were popping shots from trees and shit. They wouldn't go out there and, fight them on the battlefield like real men. Real men fight us on the battlefield. Everybody's supposed to walk out on the field and there's a motherfucker in the front with the drums. Da-dum, da-dum, dum dum dum, right? And then you got the other guy, he's in the front with the flag, right? He just holding up the flag. He don't got a gun, he ain't got shit. He just standing there holding the motherfucking flag, walking across this fucking field, and they got it, and they standing in single file line, talking about load your muskets, ain't ready, aim, fire. You know what I mean? And then the muskets go and the shit's inaccurate as fuck because they were shooting a bunch of smooth bores. Meanwhile, the Americans had already figured out, you put a little spin on that bitch, put some old English on that hoe, right? And the bullets come out and they hit their mark, right? Because you had Americans, they were hunting, they were hunting with those rifles. Again, the beginnings of the Second Amendment. You know what I mean? But the British, they were mad as fuck because we were out there, or Americans were out there. Right, I keep saying we. I gotta check myself. I'm like, nigga, you black. You a black American. You ain't really a part of this country like that. They don't fuck with you like that, nigga. Remember who the fuck you are. I gotta check myself on that. But anyway, I'm saying, friggin' Americans, right, shot the British, right? The British is mad because, y'all ain't standing in single file lines and shit. Why the fuck would we stand in single file lines? See, I say we good. Why would Americans stand in single file lines? Why? That don't make any sense. You know what I mean? Y'all got cannons, y'all got, state of the art fucking muskets and shit like that. Well, actually, it wasn't state of the art. They thought this shit was fly, but it really wasn't, right? So I'm saying all this crazy shit would be said about American revolutionaries, but yet it's just weird how America runs around, talks about freedom, freedom this, freedom that, America freedom, right? Even though we treat black people like shit, we had slavery, but freedom, right? And then when it comes to the Arabs, when it comes to the Palestinians and what they're going through and the oppression that they're facing, you know what I mean? Then all of a sudden, oh no, they're fucking terrorists. You know what I mean? Oh, look at the atrocities. Look at again. What do you think? What do you think the the American citizens were doing against the fucking British? What do you think the revolutionaries were doing against the British? You know what I'm saying? So some of these folks that I see writing these comments, these white people that I see writing these comments, I'm like, do you not get like how like you ain't really making sense? You ain't making sense. All you gotta do is just go in there and just change the race, and all of a sudden the song changes. Like that's the crazy part to me. That's the part where I'm just like, this is nuts. You go in there, you change the phrase, the race, you change the group, and then all of a sudden, like that's what determines what side you pick. It's not about there being some sort of philosophical American consistency about being an American and freedom and what America's supposed to stand for. Like, no, like, nah, they like, and it's sad because, I grew up with the idea that America was like, the land of the free, the home of the brave. But like the reality is it's the land of white supremacy. That's really what it is. There's no consistency. You know what I'm saying? Whatever that gene is, whatever that white fragility, fragile bone is in white people, all you gotta do is change the race, and then all of a sudden, all that American freedom, red, white, and blue, that shit goes right the fuck out the door. It goes completely out the door, and that's what I'm seeing with the shit. You know what I mean? Like it's like when you look at a movie, like when they show you, like, when you see Kill Bill, and they show the movie starts off, and she's pregnant, and like it was getting married and then loses the baby, right? Right? When you see Kill Bill, right? You like it gives you the idea of why this person is out for revenge. When you see Django, right, and you see the scene where the McCall brothers and what they were doing, and he was like, and Jamie Foxx is pleading, don't hurt her, do whatever you're gonna do to me, blah 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 blah. When you see Jamie Foxx's reaction to Broomhilda being put in, or Broomhilda, whatever her name was, being put in, Kerry Washington's character being put in the hot box. Like, I got triggered watching that scene. I was like, all these motherfuckers need to die. Like, that was me in the movie theater. I was like, all these motherfuckers being died. And then, Jamie Foxx's character was, cocking the hammer. I was like, shoot him in the face now. Like, that was me in the movie theater. I was like, fuck that. I'm like, you gonna in a fucking box. It's like 90 degrees outside, middle of fucking, Georgia or wherever the fuck they were on this fucking plantation. I was like, you actually do that to people? I was like, fuck that. Somebody gotta die. Like, that was my mentality when I saw that scene in that movie. You know what I mean? But so it's like, the problem is that it seems like when there's like a gap, like there's not like an immediate response. Like, people can handle an immediate response more than they can handle like any sort of like long-term, geopolitical planning of, attacking another nation or anything like that based off of, previous incidences. Like, they forget the previous incidences and they just want to start at the end. Right. It's just like when I talk about when it comes to like African Americans and, the plight of African Americans, and you talk to white people and they're like, African American history starts in 1985. Yeah, because they don't want to go back before 1985, because, they want to start while Michael Jackson is like moonwalking across the stage. They don't want to go back to talk about what went on in the 60s and the 50s and the 40s and the 30s and the 20s and the 10s and the 1900 and in the 1890s and 1880s and they don't want to go that far back because they know it was fucked up. So whenever you talk to white people who don't want to talk about American history, CRT, racism, they'll, oh no, 1985, like CK, like what was that, the comedian CK Lewis, when he was like, black people don't fuck with time machines. Like, oh brother, anything before 1980, no, 1980, no, thank you, no, thank you. You know what I'm saying? We don't fuck with time machines. Meanwhile, white people, it's like, oh, let's go back to the year 2. Oh, sir, here's a table for you. You know what I mean? And it's like, again, highlighting, how, white supremacy is like always been a thing. But I'm just saying, like, just looking at it, like, it's just, I'm just reading the comments, I'm watching the videos, and don't get me wrong, like, the videos are fucked up. Like, they're fucked up. I'm like, damn. But it's like, here's a question I have. What responsibility do a people have for the government it puts in place? Because I don't know if you've seen any of these videos on YouTube of the like Israeli like leaders and Israeli politicians, and I mean, these motherfuckers are foaming at the mouth racist. Okay? Foaming at the mouth. And again, the way that they treat black people in Israel, the way that they treat the Ethiopians in Israel, you can find plenty of videos on that on YouTube. About all these the treatment in Israel. You can pull all of these up. Okay, but what was I gonna say? I'll lose my train of thought. I'm just saying that, what responsibility do people have? Like, everybody's like, oh, their families and and these are like, it's like they view it like, I mean, a lot of the videos, I mean, they had videos, I mean, they went into the barracks, Hamas went into the barracks, shot everybody up in that barrack. I mean, I mean, these people were clearly in bed or in their underwear or whatever, just shot everybody up in the barracks. So people were probably barely awake. They kicked that door open and just sprayed them down. You know what I mean? And then you got the videos of, them going into neighborhoods where these people are living. Yeah, these people are living all these nice lives in the kibbutz, suburbia. You know what I mean? But the Palestinians ain't living like that. They ain't eating good. They're not eating high off the hog. You know what I mean? And then again, the Israelis just lacking like that, all that just out there lacking. And honestly, their army really looks like a paper tiger. As it pertains to because none of these soldiers were ready. They weren't ready. They were not ready. It took them a while, to bounce back. Like they weren't paying attention. They just and again, the thing with the Israelis, like they serve in the military. I think last time I checked, it was 2 years. It may have went up to 4 years. It's crazy. I went to college with a chick who her parents emigrated to the U.S. because they didn't want their daughter to have to serve in the military. You know what I'm saying? Like they were pro-Israel, but they didn't want their child to serve in the military, so they came to the States and then had their daughter go to the same university that I went to. It's very, 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 just looking at the shit. That's why some people, when it comes to, oh, these were civilians. Like technically, not really. Israel doesn't really have any civilians because the civilians all are trained in the military. They all have to serve. Again, anywhere from 2 to 4 years. Again, look it up. It's a part of what they have to do. And there's a lot of people who are quote unquote dodge draft or draft dodging in regards to that, but that doesn't get discussed. But what was I about to say about I'm just saying, what is the responsibility that the people have? You know what I mean? Because especially if you're claiming yourself to be an ethno state, that has elected leaders, right? That are part of this ethno state that drive an ethno agenda, right? Like if anything, the Israeli people would be more accountable than what goes on in other nations, right? Because they are an ethno state. Right? It is about being Jewish in order to be an Israeli, right? It is about being that, right? So the agendas and the policies are more specific, to tailoring around that whole concept. Where in America, like I was telling somebody in the comment section, I was like, you tell me where the American people voted on sending billions of dollars to the Ukraine. The military industrial complex and America are two separate entities. Again, this is what freaking, Dwight Eisenhower, was arguing against. You know what I'm saying? Like about the prison, not the prison industrial complex, the military industrial complex. This is what he was trying to highlight. That shit is totally Raytheon, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, all these companies, and all the, the war hawks. Now they're talking about, these people that are like, oh yeah, more war, and more. It was so funny is I met a guy who was a lobbyist for a military contractor. And what's so crazy? I'm not going to say what kind of car he was driving, but I ran into it was weird, like because he was like an old white guy, and here I am, walking around, black guy, and I wasn't even like dressed to the nines, like I was in like a t-shirt, a hoodie, and some sweatpants, right? And he had a car, and I knew exactly what it was, and it just came out, and I was like, oh, you got that? I was like, oh man, that thing is nice, right? And the car was about, it was like, I think he paid like $150,000 to $165,000 for this car. And he just basically told me that he was a lobbyist. He let me in the car, got in the car, you know what I mean? And we talked for a little bit. I was like, man, this is nice. He was like, check this out. Da 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 da. And you know what was so crazy? You know what time it was when this happened? This was this was literally at like 3 o'clock in the morning. This was 3 o'clock in the morning at a Wawa. Okay. I'm in this old white man's car. I mean, it was a moment of racial, race, shit doesn't exist. We were just some car enthusiast for the freaking 30 seconds. You know what I mean? And then when we were done, you know, I was like, hey man, thanks for letting me check out your car. Got out the car. You know what I mean? He pulled off. I got in my car and pulled off. But this was at 3 o'clock in the fucking morning. Like it wasn't. Now, granted, I will say this was in a affluent area. So, and then I guess the way I was talking is like, oh, it's not a street dude or whatever. But I mean, because we had kind of talked as we were like passing each other. I was like, oh man, I was like, that's you. I was like, he's like, yeah, da 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 da. I was like, oh man, that thing just came out. I've heard all about it. Da 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 da. He was like, you want to check it out? I was like, oh hell yeah. I was like, this guy can't be serious. Three guys. I mean, he wasn't even thinking about the shit. You know what I mean? Got in, showed me the whole shit. I mean, it was a cool moment. It was a cool moment. I'm not gonna lie. You know what I mean? It was like touch screen from like some of you are gonna guess what car it was, but it was touch screen from the left side all the way across. It was just touch screen. And I was like, oh, it's like, look at this shit. You know what I'm saying? Had the ambient lighting. Now y'all really gonna know what car I'm talking about. Had the ambient lighting. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, oh, change the color. The motherfucker was like, purple. You know what I mean? Shit was like, wow. Like on some Knight Rider shit. I was like, oh, look at this. I was like, this is hot fire. I was like, it's hot fire. But anyway, um, I'm just saying, the guy, he was a military. I was like, damn, man. I was like, how do you even get into something like that? How do you become a military contractor? You know what I mean? And you sitting there shaking hands with Mitch McConnell and trying to have a conversation with him, talking about Raytheon this, Lockheed Martin that. You know what I mean? Just throwing. I'm saying, if this dude was driving around in $50,000 to $60,000 automobile, you already know what type of money they throwing around. He was a retired fucking lobbyist. Okay? So again, the American people, we don't like vote for this bullshit. That shit is separate. Like when people voted for Biden for whatever policies they thought Biden was going to put up, like the Ukraine shit wasn't even popping off yet. I don't think. I'm pretty sure it wasn't. Nobody that had the intention of, oh, we're voting for Biden because the Ukraine war is lingering around the corner. Like no, like that shit happened, and it's just that all of that is like something that the government takes care of. Like that's how it's viewed. It's like, oh, that's just what the government does. The government takes care of that, and that's like what that is, right? Um, trying to think. But like I'm just saying, like when people try to compare it, like I don't know the politics of Israel. I don't. I should do some research. From what I've seen, they kind of have certain people have a grip on the government. People who are kind of legacy players from Stern Gang and legacy players from Haganah, which is now the IDF. And then you got all these other people that, they might just be just regular Jewish people trying to live there. But to sit there and ignore, that you're on occupied land. And again, I've seen some number of clips from some really racist Jewish people. You know what I mean? They over there, they Arabi, they over there just going crazy. This is our land. And then they start bringing up like all this like ancestral shit. And don't get me wrong, like, there was the kingdom of Judea, that was there, what I mean? But a lot of the Jewish people, they left in the Middle Ages and they went to Europe because of economic opportunities and all that, right? They had been living in the Muslim world for a very long time. You know what I'm saying? And the Muslims, like, they didn't really fuck with them like that. You know what I mean? They say, okay, the other Muslims, they got to pay the zakah. You got to pay the jizya. You know what I'm saying? And the jizya, it's like I've been doing more research on the jizya. Sometimes it was like, on some abusive shit. Other times it was like, you got to pay some type of taxes living in here. And we'll call it the jizya. You know what I'm saying? But like the whole, like, yeah, they had pockets of like little skirmishes and battles and issues here and there. But for the most part, if you just took the entire timeline of Jewish people in the Middle East, the shit was never like a collective problem until after the formation of Israel. Anybody telling you that they've had thousands of years of conflict and the Jewish people and they were warring, no, you know who the biggest enemy of the Jews were? The fucking Romans. They were the biggest enemy of the Jews, not the Muslims. You know what I'm saying? And don't get me wrong, like I said, I don't want to sit there and overstate or understate anything. I'm saying, yeah, there were conflicts every once in a while, like, there always are. There's always going to be some sort of conflict and whatnot. And then there would be, the people who are most respected who would most likely come through and resolve the issue. But this whole thing that, like, the Muslims and the Jews have been fighting and have hated each other since the beginning of time, that's totally bullshit. Again, first off, the Jewish people been there, in terms of, the religion being there, because Islam comes like, like a thousand years later. Like Islam is late to the party. You know what I mean? Again, there's a whole pre-Islamic civilization in that region. You know what I'm saying? So, religions, they come and go and all this stuff, but now it's like, now too much blood has been shed. I mean, that's just really the crux of it. Too much blood has been shed. Even when and the thing is I was telling somebody this earlier. I was like, even if the Israel, like, let's say Israel wipes Gaza off the map and all those people are going to go somewhere. All you're going to have is Jewish people having to look over their shoulders pretty much forever. Okay? Because you will have random lone wolf cells of people who are going to be scattered all around the world. And every time they get a chance to get at a Jew, they're going to try to get at one. It'll be on the bus. It'll be in Brussels. It'll be in Denmark. It'll be in Germany. It'll be in France. It'll be in America. It'll be in Argentina. It'll be, you name it. Anywhere where Jewish people, you're going to see incidences in the movies, or not movies. You're going to see incidences, in what's the word I was going to use? Just all over the place, where, it'll be like rabbi was stabbed, walking down the street, da 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 da. Like, you're going to see shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to see the synagogue was attacked, da 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 da. Like, you're just going to see that, all in the papers all over the place. And so, like, now it's like, now you got the Jewish people, they got to worry about the Muslims, and then they got to worry about the white supremacists and white nationalists, right? Because they got all their conspiracy theories and shit. Again, the Tree of Life synagogue type of shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, damn, like, I wouldn't want to be Jewish. I thought being black was bad, but I'm like, goddamn, like, y'all, like, everybody fucking hates y'all. And it's like, even looking at it, I'm like, because the Jewish people, like, they started off with, like, them buying the land. I'm trying to figure out, like, when it went from buying the land to taking the land. And when, like, the Arabs, like, whether they, said, you can't have it, or I'm not selling it to you, or whatever. You know what I mean? But it's like, anytime, I'm curious to wonder what would have happened if Jewish people just continued to buy the land and they were buying it legitimately. Like, we'll buy it for you, or we'll buy it from you. I think there was a point where they tried to buy it from the Ottoman Empire. I got to go and do more research into that. Where they tried to, who was the king of the Ottoman Empire, the ruler of the Ottoman Empire, they tried to buy it from him. I got like I said, I gotta look, and that would be prior to World War One. But it's just like, anytime, like, you go in there, and I guess like I said, the whole, like, you did people dirty, you did them dirty, and then you're just going to, like, have, like, this normalcy bias and walk around and you lacking and you think shit is sweet. Like, that's crazy to me. Like, that's crazy to me. And when you look at if you can see the videos, they're over there on the Young News channel, the YNC.com, I think is what the name of the website is. And then there's like another website, I think it's called like the Watchtower or something like that .com. They got some videos up there, and I just keep going back, and just so you know, YNC is like, it's got to be like the most satanic devil worshiping website ever. They're not really about the devil worship, but I mean, it's like a combination of gore videos, smut videos, pornography, like, I mean, just, it's the worst shit that the cartel does to people and whatnot, videos that they put out there, beheadings. Like, it's not for, the squeamish or the, the light of heart. It's just not. You know what I mean? But, I'm comfortable with it because a long time ago, I embraced the reality that this is the ugly world that we live in. I couldn't stand being around people who like to act like we live in some sort of fluffy Care Bear world and everything, because I already know that when some fucked up shit pops off, you know what I'm saying? If good people don't do anything, like, then everybody's just going to get slaughtered. And so there has to be some level of some people who are like sheepdogs, as Nothing Fancy would say. There has to be some level of somebody who's watching the flock and protecting the flock. There has to be. And there was this Arab woman that was I talked about it in another video, but she was being questioned by a Muslim student about, there's good Muslims in the world, and there's 1.8 billion Muslims in the world, and the woman, and they're good people or whatever. And she was like, basically like, why does that matter? She was like, about 25% of Muslims, and I don't know where she got the number from, but she was like 25% of Muslims are radical. And she was like, out of 1.8 billion people, 25% of 1.8 billion is something like, 400,000, 425,000, something like that. Okay, it's like, so it's larger than the entire population of the United States, right? And then obviously we know like terrorist attacks, like they're random and shit like that. So that's a lot of fucking people. That's a lot of fucking potential terrorists right there. And then even if you wanted to take, those are just the people with the radical ideas, and then, you go, and take, I don't know, 25% of them that are people who would actually, if they had the opportunity, would enact acts of violence, right? That's still a lot of people, right? So, but the point that the woman made in response, it was a brilliant point. And I have to think about it in even other applications, even as it pertains to the African American community. Because it's like, she brought up Germany. And she was like, it was a minority of Germans that were the ones that were running the Nazi party. But she was like, the peaceful Germans were irrelevant. Then she went down the list. She talked about Russia, and she talked about Stalin and how the Russia, killed, so many people and whatnot, or Stalin killed so many people. And again, the peaceful Russians were irrelevant. She brought up Japan and how Japan went into Korea, went into China, and the Nanking massacre. And again, most Japanese people were peaceful, but the peaceful people were irrelevant. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, damn, that's a damn good point. You can go to the Khmer Rouge with Pol Pot, and it's like, the peaceful Cambodians were irrelevant, right? So despite the fact that of it being a minority of people, a minority of people can do a lot of damage if everybody else is just going to be complacent. If all the people that are good people with good hearts ain't going to do shit about it. That doesn't matter. And so saying that something like, oh, the majority of Palestinians are peaceful, well, it doesn't matter if they ain't gonna do anything to stop, Hamas from doing what they're doing, knowing that Israel is going to have the type of response that it has. The disproportionate. Israel has always had a disproportionate response. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was talking to a guy who was he said the same thing I said, and it was his own independent thought. You know what I mean? But he grew up in the same era I grew up with. I was like, I used to ask the same question. I'm like, why do y'all be fucking with Israel when every time Israel be fucking your shit up? Right? Like why? Right? But then when you understand the whole concept of this is our land and they're oppressing us and everything else like that, and we don't care if we die, then you start to begin to understand it. Like, we will be a thorn in your side. Like, same thing I said about all the smash and grabs and shit like that. I'm like, America has the black people it deserves, redlining, blockbusting, Jim Crow, eminent domain, urban renewal, convict leasing, COINTELPRO, denial of FHA loans, racial housing covenants, job discrimination, mass incarceration. I mean, you just go through the list, and then you're surprised that your city's full of niggas. You're surprised, like fuck out of here. You did it, like your people did it. And don't sit there and try to say, oh, well, it wasn't me, because, again, start talking about inventions and shit like that. White people be the first ones in line trying to take credit for it. Alexander Graham Bell, we did that. Freaking Kitty Hawk and the airplane, we did that. But then you start talking about the negatives like slavery and well, I didn't own any slaves. That ain't got nothing to do with me. You start talking about, the freaking lynchings of black people. I never lynched a black person. That ain't got nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? But you start talking about other things that they identify with and think are positive. Oh, they're the first ones. We invented that. We created that. We constructed that. It's all we about all the people that are dead and been dead. See, they don't want any of the negative shit. The positive shit, they're like, yes, that is us. That is my culture. That is my people. That is us. We did it. As soon as you get to the negative, oh, no, that ain't got nothing to do with me. Oh, you should have taken that up with our ancestors. Don't take that up with me. Again, like I said, white people love generational wealth. They love generational pride, generational esteem, things that build up the esteem. But when it comes to that generational debt, oh, no, hell no, nigga. We don't want none of that. When it comes to the generational negative stuff, like the shit that Governor DeSantis is talking about, oh, it's gonna make telling white people real American history, that's gonna make them feel bad. We don't want them feeling bad. You know what I mean? It's like, and to me, it always kills me, because I'm like, black people been feeling bad being on the losing side of history, especially, in America. You know what I mean? We how would you like to be a black kid, or how would you like to be a black parent telling your kids about how white people used to own us? How would you like to sit down and have that? At least as a white person, you get to say that you're on the winning side. You get to say, hey, we weren't slaves. You know what I mean? It feels bad that you were the ones, but hey, at least, better to be the slave owner than to be the actual slave. Right? If anybody had a choice between the two, who would say, "Oh yes, I would rather be the slave, because it's the morally superior position." Like, what the fuck out of here? Nah. But anyway, I've spoken long enough. That's all I gotta say. That's my video. SWP out. Don't forget to comment, share, like, and subscribe.